As Donald Trump sat in a New York courtroom in his 2016 election interference trial, one of his other legal teams was in Washington, D.C., arguing before the Supreme Court that he should have immunity from his 2020 election interference case. Now, as we said last night on our special program last night, the arguments were frankly shocking. Many legal observers, people I know personally who are no illusions about this court, genuinely taken aback by the fact that conservative justices seem to be almost openly colluding with Donald Trump, reconceptualizing the president in real time as a sort of lawless dictator and just ignoring all the constitutional, textual, historical evidence that points in the other direction. To my mind, one of the most galling things, and it didn't get mentioned yesterday during oral arguments, but it's worth mentioning here, is that during Donald Trump's own impeachment trial for this very matter, his attempts to overturn the election, his own lawyer, before the nation and before the Senate, argued the literal opposite of what his lawyer is now arguing to the Supreme Court.
The senator from Texas's question raises a very, very important point. There is no such thing as a January exception to impeachment. There is only the text of the Constitution which makes very clear that a former president is subject to criminal sanction after his presidency for any illegal acts he commits.
You did not hallucinate that. That was Donald Trump's lawyer in the Senate saying the following: the text of the Constitution makes very clear that a former president is subject to criminal sanction after his presidency for any illegal acts he commits. That was the argument Trump's lawyers used in 2021 to help avoid conviction in the Senate. Don't worry, you can vote to acquit him, and we all still know, because it's obvious, that he could face criminal sanctions. Now, his lawyers across the street in the Supreme Court 3 years later are making literally the opposite argument to a receptive Supreme Court. As Jamelle Bouie put it in the New York Times, Trump has asked the Supreme Court if he is, in effect, a king, and at least 4 members of the court, among them the so-called originalists, have said, in essence, they'll have to think about it. Jamelle Bouie, opinion columnist for the New York Times, joins me now. Jamelle, I loved your column today. I thought it was really fantastic work. One of the things I liked about it was all the historical evidence you entered, which was bizarrely absent from all the originalists. I mean, you got Trump's lawyer clinging like a life raft to one Ben Franklin quote, which he keeps throwing out there every time, when there's just an enormous corpus of writing from folks who were actually at the Constitutional Convention, who were at state conventions, saying, early Supreme Court justices saying, like, obviously the president's not immune.
Right. Yeah, I pulled that from the Great Historians Brief, kind of a collection of really, excellent historians put together a brief with the Brennan Center, basically like kind of laying out, here is all the evidence against the claim that the president is sort of criminally immune. But to be completely honest with you, even doing that feels like a silly exercise, yes, to some extent, because it's just, to me at least, self-evident that the president is criminally liable for illegal acts. Like a president, if a president who has criminal immunity, so the president is a civil officer under the Constitution, if that person's criminal immunity, they are no longer a president by definition. They are a king, they are some other thing that stands above the entire system, but they're not a president. And so it's just sort of like system breaking to suppose that the president is above the law in any sense. And so you can marshal all of this historical evidence. And I do think it's worth doing. It's worth showing in detail, right, that the people who constructed this thing thought a lot about this specific question and gave us pretty straightforward answers that don't really require any interpretation. But I also think it's worth saying that, listen, by definition, the president has to be legally accountable.
Yeah, this really is a kind of go with your gut situation. Like, what is your intuition about this is correct as an American, as we threw off the tyranny of the monarch, like no one is above the law. Like, that is correct. And that's what the lower courts found. The other way I agree with you that it feels like shadow boxing is, and this I think was what was so appalling about the arguments yesterday, is that they don't, it feels like the fix is in, that it's cooked. you know, that they're not really listening or reasoning legally. What they're doing is trying to find an out for him.
Right. Right. I mean, I think the big tell, the giveaway, that they refuse to deal with the facts in question. Right. They refuse to deal with the actual situation that we're facing. They're spinning these hypotheticals. Well, what if president, you know, is afraid of being prosecuted and then they're going to stay in office? It's like, yeah, what if? But like what actually happened is that the president was defeated in an election and then refused to leave and summon a mob to overturn the process by which he is supposed to leave. And that wasn't because he was afraid of prosecution. If Donald Trump had just like went gently off into the night after losing, he could still run again. Like no one would care, right? There wouldn't be a prosecution. This is happening because he tried to overturn the process. And so this isn't some sort of vengeful, you know, Biden, some vengeful Justice Department going after Trump because he signed some bills they didn't like. It's because he did something genuinely transgressive and system threatening. And the fact that the court just decided that this didn't matter. We're going to talk about abstractions and hypotheticals like this is a law school class. I think you're right. It is the tell. It is telling us that the fix is in. That they're trying to find a way to not have to come down hard on Trump. I also thought it also felt a little bit like I was in a sort of like lefty postmodern undergrad classroom where like, you know, they're sort of like, well, what president doesn't break the law? They're all crooks, really. It's like, really? Is that the position of the U.S. Supreme Court? Like, are they all crooks? Like, I don't know. That's not what I thought you would think. The last thing here, just briefly, is I think you and I share part of what was upsetting, too, is that this isn't over yet, and I'm worried about this court, like deathly worried about what they have set up for us in the future. Right. You know, at the very least, they've delayed a trial. The trial will be delayed. The public will not be able to get a sense, if a jury of citizens, right, decides that Trump is guilty here, which I think is important information for the public to know. And it's also, you know, Trump could win in November, and it's setting up a constitutional crisis, right? It's setting up a situation in which Trump tries to kill the investigation. Yep. And then we're entering a whole new chapter of American history in a bad way. Yeah. Jamelle Bouie, as always, thank you, sir. As we have noted many times on this show, Texas Republican Ted Cruz seems to have one foot out of the door of the U.S. Senate. He's turned his powerful elected position into essentially a part-time job while he focuses his efforts on more satisfying work. Of course, I'm talking about his podcast, The Big Comfy Chair with Ted Cruz. The senator records 3 episodes a week, which is not nothing. Certainly sounds like a lot from a senator from the second most populous state in the country in the middle of a tight race for re-election. Now, beyond the weirdness of devoting so much of his time to his side hustle, Cruz's podcasting habit raises some serious ethical and legal questions. Who is actually producing the program, and what is happening to the money it generates? Well, we have some fascinating new answers. Back in 2022, Cruz partnered with iHeartRadio, the #1 syndicator of U.S. radio programming, reaching 245 million people each month. iHeart would bankroll the whole operation, although Cruz aides and iHeart executives didn't provide details of the deal, including how much Cruz will be paid for the rights to the podcast. That was a murky but important issue, considering the Senate's strict rules on outside employment. You can't just, like, have another job. There are whole pages about this in the Senate Code of Conduct. So how do you get around that? As we recently learned, you pay Ted Cruz's super PAC rather than Ted Cruz himself. As the Dallas Morning News explains, since March 2023, the pro-Cruz Truth and Courage PAC has received a series of increasingly larger payments from iHeartMedia Management Services, Inc. that total more than $630,000. That's about a third of the total amount of money the PAC reports raising since the beginning of 2023. A spokesperson for an iHeart subsidiary called Premier Networks said in a statement that Cruz volunteers his time to host the podcast and isn't compensated for it. She further explained they sell advertising time for the podcast, and the money being directed to the Truth and Courage PAC is, quote, associated with those advertising sales. Now, when a local news outlet confronted Cruz with this information, the senator got very defensive.
So if an entity which employs lobbyists is giving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to your reelection efforts, how can you say you're not being compensated?
You know, it really is sad what's happened to the media, which is the media exists right now seemingly to parrot left-wing Democrat attacks. The group that brought that attack is a left-wing Democrat attack group.
Makes sense he's touchy because the arrangement may well violate election laws. Campaign finance lawyer explains independent super PACs are barred from coordinating with candidates and campaigns they support. Candidates are also limited in how much money they can solicit for super PACs and are prohibited from soliciting corporate donations to them. It's hard to see how Ted Cruz's thrice weekly podcast, owned and produced by his super PAC, which takes in hundreds of thousands of dollars from it, does not constitute coordination or soliciting donations. And it's got everyone asking, why is this happening? No, I'm sorry. That's my podcast, actually. Why is this happening? Which you can download with the QR code there or wherever you get your podcasts. But I digress. The Ted Cruz deal. That deal may also be in violation of the Ethics in Government Act. In fact, the Campaign Legal Center filed a complaint with the Senate Ethics Committee asking to investigate whether Cruz is disguising speaking fees as payments to a super PAC in violation of the law and Senate rules. So, not only is Ted Cruz's podcasting habit weird, I think a little insulting to the 30 million Texans he represents, presumably full-time, it also appears to be a serious ethical and campaign finance scandal in the making.